Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our iOS development with a UIKit tutorial series, and in this particular tutorial we are going to be taking a look at how we can display a list of data using UITableView. Now, what is a UITableView? Well, a UITableView is exactly what I just said. It is a list of data. You can do all kinds of things with this list of data, including adding swipe actions to each cell, adding context menus. You can have various different editing styles. For an edit mode, you can pull to refresh in a UITableView controller. You can create custom cells with both UIKit and SwiftUI. You can do all kinds of things. You can make your list of data searchable, all kinds of stuff. And we'll take a look at some of those things as we go forward. But in this particular example, we're going to be using a very basic table view, and we're going to display a list of SF symbols. And each of those SF symbols is going to be colored with a random color. And so it'll kind of show you the kind of things that we can do with a basic UITableView cell and a basic UITableView, but not everything, right? This is just a very, very basic example. All right, so if we take a look at my main screen, I have a variable called data and a variable called colors. These are being initialized to arrays of strings and arrays of UI and an array of UI color that I have in my constants file. As you can see in the initializer, we're calling a super initializer for my UI view controller because we need to call a designated initializer. And then I have the obligatory required initializer with a NS coder, and we're just having it crash saying not supported if this initializer is ever called for whatever reason. And then in the rest of the code, I have some basic UI configured for an object called list. Now, this list is going to be our UI table view. So I have programmatic constraints enabled. I have the list added as a subview to the view, and then I have its constraints configured where it's pinned to the top, bottom, leading, and trailing edges of the view itself. Alright, so let's go ahead and actually begin creating our UI table view. So in Xcode, beneath our colors and data variable, we need to create our UITableView object. So here we'll say var list equals UITableView, just like that. But we're not done. We now need to also create two separate classes, and these classes are going to allow us to create what's called a delegate and a data source for our table view. Now, the delegate is an object for our table view that allows us to use various functionality, such as being able to support row selection, moving cells around, stuff like that. Whereas the data source provides methods to describe the data that the table view supports, that the table view contains, such as the number of sections, the number of rows in each section, how we're going to configure each cell, stuff like that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. First things first is we're going to create those objects, and then we're going to create the classes for those objects. So after our table view, we're going to say var, we'll call it delegate equals, we'll say devices list delegate, and we want to pass it the data and all the colors, like that. And then our data source is much of the same. So instead of delegate, it'll be data source, like that. And then instead of devices list delegate, it'll be devices list data source, like that. And then again, we pass it the data, but we probably aren't going to need the colors. And, well, actually, we will need the colors for the data source, but not for the delegate. So, comma, okay. All right. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and create these classes. Inside of our navigator, I'm going to say new file from template. I'm going to say Swift file. And then in here, we'll say devices list data source. All right. And now inside of this class, or inside of this file, instead of importing foundation, we want to import UIKit. And then we want to create a class. So class devices list data source. And then we need to do something, else here. And that is, we need to inherit from NSObject, which will allow our delegate and our data source to communicate between itself and Objective-C. And then we need to conform to the UITableView data source protocol. So NSObject, and then UITableView data source. Open that up, and now Xcode is going to yell at you, but first I want to create the initializer for this. So var data, an array of strings, var colors, and then colors, an array of UI color, init, data, an array of string, like that, and then colors, an array of UI color. Inside of our initializer, pretty simple stuff. Self.data equals data. Self.colors equals colors. Now, we need to actually fix this error inside of Xcode, and that is, it's yelling at us because we haven't conformed to UITableView data source. So, if you recall, protocols are like a list of requirements that your class must meet or your structure must meet. If these methods are not marked as optional, meaning you don't have to provide an implementation, then you have to provide an implementation for them. And there are a few methods that we do need to do this for. First is number of rows in section. This will, as the name implies, allow us to specify how many rows are in a given section. And then we need cell for row at, which is what will allow us to specify what the cells for our table view are actually going to look like. And then optionally, I'm going to include number of sections, so we know how many, so we can explicitly say how many sections we've got in our table. So let's go ahead and start with number of rows in section. So number of rows in section. Okay, we want to make sure that this is working. Okay, yep. And then we want to return data.count, like that. Second, we're going to want cell for row at. All right. And then in here, for now, I'm just going to return a UITableViewCell, like that, because we'll get back to this implementation, because we actually do need to implement this as something other than simply returning a blank cell. And then finally, number of... Oh, come on. Okay, so something isn't quite right here. Okay, there we go. That was odd. I don't know how that managed to screw itself up, but that's fine. So number of sections. And then in here, inside of our number of sections, we're going to just simply return 1, like that. Okay, and that is our data source on the most basic fundamental level. Now we're going to create the delegate, but keep in mind, again, we're not done with the data source yet. We have to create our custom cell, and then we're going to come back to cell for row at index path. All right, we're going to create another file. another Swift file, and we're going to call this one devices list delegate. Like that. And then inside of here, we're going to do something very similar, where we're going to import UIKit instead of foundation. So import UIKit like that. And then we'll create a class called devices list delegate. Have it inherit from NSObject. And then conform to UITableView delegate. And open it up. Okay. Something got screwed up there. Some typos happened, so let's say class devices list delegate NSObject UITableView delegate, and open it up. So delegate, there we go. Now we can say var data as an array of strings, init data an array of string, self dot data equals data, like that. And that's it. We do not need to implement anything as of yet into the delegate, because all of the methods inside of UITableView delegate are marked as optional, so we don't have to implement any of them yet. When we cover how we can select a row to navigate to another screen, for example, in a navigation controller, then yes, we will need to be able to do that. All right, so with that, go ahead and save this. And the last thing we need to do before we can actually run our application is we need to assign our delegate and data source to our table view. So inside of our main screen, let's go to configure UI. And then above where we're enabling our programmatic constraints, we're going to say list.delegate equals delegate, and then list.dataSource equals data source, like that. Okay, and then we have an error here that we need to fix. So what we're going to do okay. So we're going to change things up here just slightly. So we'll say var delegate equals, or rather, this is going to be of type devices list delegate, and then var data source of type devices list data source. All right, and then inside of the initializer, we're going to say self.delegate equals devices list delegate, give it the data, so self.data, and then self.data source is going to be equal to devices list data source with self.data and okay. Here we want self.data like that. Okay. And then colors, self.colors like that. Okay, there we go. Now let's try to run our code. All right, we have a successful build. Okay. So here's our application. Right now we have a heading in our navigation controller as devices, and then we have our table view here in the user interface. You can see that right now it has nothing in it because we have a bunch of empty table view cells. But we can change that. So inside of Xcode, we're going to create another class, and this class is going to inherit from UITableViewCell. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll say new file from template. Inside of our template chooser, I'm going to say Swift file. And we're going to say this is going to be called device cell. Pretty simple. And instead of importing foundation, we'll say import UIKit like that. And we'll say class device cell, and we're going to inherit from UITableViewCell like that. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to define the UI components that are going to be part of this cell. And we want just an image view, so a UI image view, to display the device symbol, and we want a label to display the name of that symbol. So we'll say var symbol image equals UI image view, and var symbol name equals UI label, like that. All right. Next, we are going to override an initializer that takes in a style parameter. So override init we want UITableViewCell.cellStyle. And then inside of this initializer, we just want to simply put super.init style and then pass it style. And then give it a reuse identifier of well, we'll make it nil for now, because we are going to register this. We're going to register the cell in a moment when we're done configuring our device cell here. But what we do want is above our overridden initializer, we're going to say static let reuse identifier equals device underscore cell, like that. And we're going to use that as our reuse identifier. All right, now the last thing that we want is we want a function. We're going to call it set, and this is going to configure everything in our cell that we want to have configured. So func set, and we want the name, which is going to be a string, and then we want its color, which is going to be a UI color. All right. And so with that, what we want to happen is we want to say symbol image dot image is equal to a UI image with a system name of name oh, that's right. We also need our required initializer here. So let's go ahead and put that in here real quick. So required init, and then we'll say fatal error not supported. Okay. Required init coder ns coder fatal error not supported, like that. All right. Okay, what is it complaining about now? Required init. Okay. Okay, we're good. Xcode was just delaying. All right. Next, we'll say symbol image dot. It should be content mode equals dot dot scale aspect fit, like that. Fit. There we go. Symbol image dot it's going to be tint color equals color, like that. Nothing too complicated thus far. And then we're going to say symbol name dot text is going to be equal to name as well. Symbol dot symbol name dot text color equals color, like that. Okay. Now that we've configured the text and color of our label, we need to actually set up its constraints. And we need to make sure that both symbol image and symbol name have auto layout constraints enabled. So symbol name dot translates auto resizing mask into constraints equals false. Symbol image dot translates auto resizing mask into constraints equals false, like that. Add subview symbol name, add subview symbol image, ns layout constraints, ns layout constraint dot activate and then inside of this array of constraints, we're going to say symbol image dot width anchor dot constraint equal to constant. And we'll say it's going to be, let's say 75 points. And then the same thing for the height anchor. So symbol image dot height anchor dot constraint is equal to constant 75. Symbol image dot leading anchor dot constraint equal to leading anchor. So the leading anchor of the cell, and it's going to be a constant of 20. So it'll be 20 points away from the leading anchor. And then symbol image dot center y anchor dot constraint is going to be equal to the center y anchor of our cell. Pretty simple stuff thus far. This is pretty basic layout code, so you should know how to do this by now. That's why I'm kind of breezing through it so quickly. Symbol name dot center y anchor dot constraint is going to be equal to the center y anchor of our cell. Then it's going to be symbol name dot leading anchor dot constraint is going to be equal to the leading anchor of our cell with a, or rather, not so much the leading anchor of our cell. It's going to be symbol image dot trailing anchor with a constant of 20. So it'll be 20 points away from the trailing anchor of the image. Next, we're going to have the trailing anchor of the label. So we'll say symbol name dot trailing anchor dot constraint is equal to, we want the trailing anchor of our cell with a constant of -20. So it'll be 20 points away from the trailing anchor of our cell. And that's it. That's all we're going to need. Those are all the constraints set up. We have all of the properties for our user interface, everything. Now, the next thing that we need to do is register our cell in our main screen and then go to our delegate, or rather our data source, and actually create the cell that we need to create there. So we'll go to the main screen. All right. And inside of ViewDidLoad, we are going to say list.register. In here, we're going to specify the type of cell that we want to register. In this case, it's going to be device cell dot self. And then the second parameter is going to be, I believe it's first cell reuse identifier. There we go. And here we're going to say device cell dot reuse identifier. That way we don't have to hard code any strings anywhere else other than the actual constant itself that we're referencing here. So we're not doing any typos or anything like that. And that's it for our main screen. Let's go ahead and go to our data source now. All right. Now, before we do that, I want to make sure here that we have the right height. So I believe it should be height, unless this is a delegate method, which is entirely possible. It probably is a delegate method. So we'll go ahead and do that here in a second. So let's go ahead and actually return our cell here. So what we're going to do is we need to dequeue a reusable cell, and all that means is pretty much that if a cell with the given identifier doesn't exist, it'll create one, and then if it does exist with that identifier, it'll reuse and recycle an existing cell, just reconfiguring all of its properties. That way, what that'll do is it will allow us to save memory and all that and not have to create so many new cells. Now, the result of the method that we're going to call here is an optional UITableViewCell. So the first thing we need to do is safely unwrap the result, and then we need to cast that to device cell. And we can do this with a guard statement. So guard let cell equals TableView dot dequeue reusable cell with identifier, and we'll say device cell dot reuse identifier as question mark device cell else, like that. If that's, if we can't do that, then we will return a UITableViewCell, so a blank cell. Once we get past our guard statement, we know that we have a device cell that we can use. Then we'll just say cell dot set the first thing that we need to give it is the name. So we'll say data at index path dot row. And then here we're going to simply do colors at a random index. So int dot random in 0 dot less than colors dot count. Like that. Because remember, I mentioned at the very beginning of the video that our color is going to be random every time we get a new cell. So now every time this method is run and we dequeue a reusable cell, we're going to set the title or the name of the symbol and the color. We're getting a random color. And lastly, we're going to return cell, like that. And there we go. that is our data source. Let's go into our delegate now and define the height for our cell. So inside of our delegate, here we'll say height, I believe it's height for row at. There we go. And then we will return, let's say we want 20 on each, the top, bottom, and leading edges. So 75 plus 20, that would be 95. There we go. Or wait, no, that would be 75 plus 40. That would be 115. There we go. All right, save that. And with that, let's run our code. All right, and here's our app. We have devices. And we have our devices listed in our table view with the symbols and the names, and they're all different colors. All right, so that's it. That's how we can define and create our own UI table view as well as a custom cell using UIKit. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. I know this was a long video, so thank you for sticking with me.